Welcome to Connect Silicon Valley. We're so happy you joined us for Engage Virtual Edition. Engage hosts conversations with leaders about the intersection of faith and the marketplace. Today's topic is Technology, Life, and Love, featuring Vanessa Russell, ex-Cisco Systems go-to-market program leader and now founder and executive director for Love Never Fails, a Bay Area nonprofit. Our hosts and moderators today are Michael Griego and Anna Gonzalez. Michael is CEO and founder of MXL Partners. He's an internationally recognized sales management consultant and author of the book 42 Rules to Increase Sales Effectiveness. Michael writes a blog entitled Biblical Viewpoint and is a member of the executive committee of Connect Silicon Valley. Anna is CEO and founder of Alturas Technology Services, a leader in the technology, recruiting, staffing, and consulting space. She's a member of the steering committee for Connect Silicon Valley, and she released an album entitled Piece of Heaven, dedicated to her father in 2013.
Well, welcome everybody. Welcome to Engage. This is part of Connect Silicon Valley. This is a quarterly encounter that we have with, dare I say, normal people in the Silicon Valley who can share their stories. And we're happy to have us all here today. My name is Mike Griego, and I am the host today. My day job is running a sales consulting business, but in my free time, I work with Connect Silicon Valley, which is an organization that runs the big annual prayer breakfast. Many of you may be familiar with here in the Valley, as well as other similar events that are smaller, even more intimate, like these kinds of Engage events, tech talks, as well as priority living. Today, our Engage events are virtual. They're all online now, and we are really focused on having engaging and encouraging conversations about that intersection of faith and the marketplace. So we're pleased today to have as our guest speaker, Vanessa Russell, who has a very compelling story about how she got in the tech business, how she got out of the tech business, and how she now is still engaged in the tech business, but actually coming at it from a very different angle in ways that are touching lives in significant ways. So our conversation today, we've themed Technology, Life, and Love. So Vanessa, welcome.
Thank you. So happy to be here.
Great. Also, I'm pleased to introduce my co-host today, Anna Gonzalez, who runs her own business. It's a tech placement firm here in the Valley. And Anna also recently was a past Engage guest speaker as well. So welcome, Anna.
Thank you so much, Mike. I'm happy to be here.
Great. Well, to set the stage, Vanessa, your story has a bit of everything to me, reminding me of Old Testament nomadic wanderings and drama and trauma, danger. There's dysfunction, even death and evil. Mm-hmm. And then reminiscence of some New Testament people that encounter Jesus, like that answer-seeking Pharisee, Nicodemus, or that high-impact and very influential Mary Magdalene, whose own life was transformed. And then even there's elements here of the story of the rich young ruler. Think like a Silicon Valley tech exec who makes big choices and decisions about allegiance and life focus. So Vanessa, I know you spent most of your career in IT here in the Valley and various management roles, even over 12 years with Cisco Systems. And now you're full-time with Love Never Fails, a nonprofit firm that you founded. Before we get into your work life and how that morphed into what you're doing today, I'd like to kind of go back to the beginning, and that is, what shaped you as a child? Talk to us about that.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for the stories, the biblical stories. They're so inspirational, and I feel pretty pumped up about the journey after hearing all of those sort of similarities, right? As I've gone through my life, certainly the beginning of my life was fairly tumultuous, and I think lots, as you mentioned, some difficult, very difficult biblical stories have aligned with with what I went through as an early child. I was born to a 19-year-old mother and a 21-year-old father who were in the middle of a bunch of riots and racial divide. Maybe very much like this time. It was a lot of chaos, a lot of division. My parents were hippies. My dad was Black, my mom was white, and they were, I'm originally from Reading, Pennsylvania. There was just there were a lot of challenges, and they were young, they were hippies, they were into music and arts. And so my life was filled with creativity and music, and it was filled with sometimes drugs and abuse. And all of that culminated in my mom making the very difficult decision to place me in foster care as a baby for a time, and even fleeing from her hometown of Reading, Pennsylvania, to Florida, and then to the San Francisco Bay Area, and us arriving in the San Francisco airport with one suitcase to our name. And so lots of poverty and abuse and difficulty, but also a story that I like to characterize as one where a woman, a young lady, pioneered the world with a small child, the very best that she could. So,
Wow, that's there's a lot going on there. That's like sex, drugs, and rock and roll all kind of wrapped up in
yes,
that kind of life. It's interesting how you travel from, in a sense, coming west and kind of it's a very bold move
yeah,
by your mother, and that kind of setting to get away from what you were kind of escaping.
yes.
And what about you? What strikes you about Vanessa's story there?
I just picture her as a little girl, growing up and trying to navigate the world and understand her identity and her place in the world, and carrying a heavy burden, right?
Very.
Throughout her childhood, but also carrying the burden later on of nurturing her mother who faced depression. And I know one thing that I don't know if it came up when you were talking, but I know there was rape involved in your life and a lot of trauma. And I can't help but think of Romans 8:28, that says, and we know that all things work together for good to those who love God, right? Who are called
Yeah.
according to his
According
purpose.
to his purpose.
So
That's right.
the thing that God uses our stories to actually fulfill his purpose in our lives and through our lives.
Yeah, that is so ironic when I reflect back, because as was in my bio, I didn't actually come to a true relationship where I was talking to God, and I had acknowledged that he was real, and he loved me until I was 29. And yet all those early years, he was right there with me, and comforting me and guiding me. And I was, I must say, I was in a place in my early years where I felt very abandoned, felt very angry. I even wrote, I think I mentioned this to you guys during our pre-meetings, that I wrote my thesis for my bachelor's degree. I had to write on a particular topic of interest, and I wrote about organized religion, and I said, oh, that's just for people that are looking for an excuse to gather, and hypocrites. That's the way that I saw relationship with the Lord. It was very much very embittered and negative, and yet there was this colliding that happened to me there when I came to my own relationship that was transformative and it was exhorting and it was edifying. And I can't explain it really what happened to me without just saying I'm so grateful, because I was a very hurt person leading up to that point, even though I was extremely successful, very hurt and abandoned, and I really needed the love of God.
So Vanessa, it's interesting that you get to a point where you're writing a school paper on that type of essentially kind of bitterness or cynicism or religion. But if you try to think of going back to in your youth, because all of us are shaped by these experiences, either what we're taught by parents or not taught by parents, or in your case, the struggles and kind of this search. You end up kind of with one suitcase on the West. But in a sense, think about what really was in your mind as a little girl, but as you're growing up through your years, who was God to you? What was God? Who was God? Kind of put together how you got to know God in your youth, or different inputs that you had as you're growing.
Yeah. So one person had a huge impact on me, and that was my babysitter, Mary. And I grew up in the Mission District in San Francisco, and she would watch me, and she would take me to St. Peter's Church. And there was a father there, Father Tom. And I remember the way that he would look at me, and the way that he spoke gently, and the way that people would pray there at the church. And I felt so peaceful. And I even asked my mom, and could I go with Mary, to the church again? Because there was a peace and a tranquility there that I had observed. However, then I had this duality in that I was suffering, I was hurting, I was angry, I was alone. I spent a lot of time alone. My mom was a single mom working, and so I was a latchkey kid, very young. Had to comb my own hair, and this is a lot of hair. So I need you to understand what I'm talking about here. This is a lot of work, and and from the age of like 6. Combing my own hair, getting myself up, getting myself to school, going to school, coming home, getting my own lunch, my own, snacks together, taking care of myself until mom got home at 5 or 6. Mom goes to sleep. Mom's, dealing with mental illness and different depressions and stuff. So she's sleeping, and I'm there, watching TV, eating TV dinners. It was a tough road. And then, there were things like on the way home, there were people that were drinking and smoking on the street corners that were trying to grab at me and talk to me and say vulgar things to me. And I just didn't feel safe. And I thought, that maybe God is there in that church, but he's definitely not out here on these streets where I'm at, where I'm being bothered and molested and beaten up by kids, and no one seems to care. And that, interestingly, that really informed my my thoughts about this God that people would talk about.
Wow. I remember you said something about your beyond your babysitter Mary, and this kind of life, experiences that you were having there, pretty rough, doing things by yourself, that you had been exposed to a boyfriend or some relationship with your mom that was a Jehovah's Witness, as well as some other Christian friends that were going to Salvation Army. So you had kind of these different Christian influences as far as, talk to us about that.
Yeah, so my best friend, Rachel, she and I met in the San Francisco Children's Choir at 5 years old. And she and I are still friends to this day. It's amazing. It's just amazing. So, but she kept that Rachel, she's the one who eventually got me to church, and where I gave my life to the Lord at the age of 29. From the age of 5, she was relentless, Mike. I mean, she just kept on telling me about this God that she was coming into contact with at the Salvation Army. And, I was like, that's good for you. Not so, not for me, that's cool for you. And, and one thing about Rachel that did shine through is she was going through the same things I was going through, but she did have a joy and a happiness about her that that was infectious and very very attractive. And so, but I just thought that she was just cool. That's it. She just got to be cool. So anyway, she continued to invite me to services, and eventually I went with her and gave my life to the Lord there at 29. So it definitely that influenced. And then I had this boyfriend whose mom was a Jehovah's Witness, and she would come to my high school and study with me in the car during lunch break. And for me, that I really enjoyed that I had someone that was taking the time to spend with me and prioritizing Bible studies with me. Unfortunately, there came a tipping point where I had to get baptized, and that's when I decided that wasn't the right route for me. But all of those things helped me I certainly was in my word. That's one thing I can say about her and the teaching that she did. She was helping me to really care about studying, and so all of that shaped what who I am today. And as I don't know if I put this in my bio, but I became a licensed pastor last year, and who would have thunk, right?
I understand you also you had a child in the early 20s.
Mm-hmm.
So talk to us about the impact of that on your life at that point.
Well, that is really what, if I had to say one single life event that turned my life around and pointed me back to, helped to reframe my thinking about abandonment and about suffering, was having my child. I mean, think about childbirth, right? You're like, that is one of the most painful things you'll ever experience in your life. And yet you get this beautiful just gift when you go through that suffering and that pain. And it was through those experiences with my little boy, who, by the way, he's 25 now, and him and his wife just had our second grandchild 2 weeks ago. Hi, Miles. So we're super great, super grateful to be grandparents to him and Lilsey's 2 babies. But I am just amazed at the love that you can have for a child that hasn't done anything to earn your love, a child that can't even speak, a child that just is. And that, when I did my talk with Silicon Valley prayer breakfast years ago, it was the joy in being and not doing, right? Just in being. And that's what his birth really propelled me into this awareness that maybe God is with me through all these difficult circumstances. And maybe, just maybe, all of this pain that I've experienced is going to be used for good.
Wow. And I'm sure you have some thoughts on that, given your background and early raising of children.
Yes. I'm like your mom. I was 19 when I had my first child. There's a couple of things that stand out from what you just talked about. One is the importance of mentors and people, right? I think that we underestimate the influence that we can have on people. But I've heard from so many people that mentors, coaches, are the ones that have really shaped their life and influenced them.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one. And the other thing, I can't help but think of your life and our lives really as a tapestry, right? That's woven together, that is intricate, it's complex, and it's not finished really until we go home to be with the Lord, right? I feel like the 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 finishing product is really being in heaven. But what a beautiful thing, right? That your life has been woven, not, you know, in an easy way, but in a way that's shaped you to become the woman you are, you know, and
Yeah.
a woman that's giving back.
Yeah.
Um, and I can't help but see how God was knocking on your door, right?
Oh,
Uh,
yeah.
for so long.
It's so clear.
And it was like when you had your child, that was kind of the culmination sort of him preparing you to know his love in an
Yeah.
intimate, like, it's like he was preparing you for that moment.
Yes, he was.
It's great. It's great. So Vanessa, take us up to kind of what you do now and kind of how you got there, because you
Yeah.
got into IT, you got developed even in spite of that type of upbringing. You
Mm-hmm.
pulled yourself through in a very kind of impressive way to get yourself into where you're working for Cisco Systems, and
Yeah.
you're involved and you've developed some skills, and then take us to what you do now and why.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, so my mom started working at Pacific Bell, which is now, SBC Global, but she started working there as actually a messenger in her early days. It was Pac Bell. And then she moved into a tech division where she was provisioning T1 lines. And, I thought that was kind of interesting. And she then went to late in life. She went in her 40s, I believe it was. She went to USF to participate in their the College of Professional Studies program. And I saw her going back to school, and I thought, wow, college, like maybe I should go to college. And I got to tell you, like I was in the gifted program. I was always told I was super smart, but I didn't believe it. I did not think I was going to go to college. I thought I literally, and this is crazy when I say what I ended up doing, but I was making plans to go to Vegas and be a dancer. I was making plans to be in a whole different life, even though intellectually and artistically I had so many other gifts. It was just, I felt the draw, I felt the pull towards this other life, not knowing what that was, right? Not understanding what the pull was and the draw was. And so here I went to San Francisco City College. I was totally, I was accepted to UC Berkeley. I was accepted to UCLA, couldn't afford it. So I went to junior college. Then I went and transferred into Berkeley from San Francisco City College, went to Berkeley. Then I went to USF. I went to school for 10 years. And that was really inspired by my mom doing it first. And I did it at night while I was a single mom of this little baby. And so let's just say I've learned to survive on very little sleep. But that then propelled me when I saw that I could do that, I began to open up my eyes that I could learn new things. I could try new things. And that's when the tech boom happened. And someone said, hey, do you want to come and work for Pac Bell as well in the internet company and help us launch digital subscriber lines, DSL? And I'm like, sure. So I applied for some jobs and got in there, and literally, Mike, I was promoted every 3 months. Every 3 months, I was a technical analyst, then I became a senior technical analyst, then I was the manager, then I was a senior manager, then, and I just kept going up. And, you mentioned earlier, Anna, there were so many mentors that came alongside me, that coached me, that gave me opportunities. And it was like God was kind of opening this door to this world that I had no idea about. And all I knew was I wanted the very best for my baby. And I didn't want to be hungry, and I didn't want to be homeless ever again. And that sort of lit the fire under me. And yeah. And then it collided with other things, which, I'm sure we're going to talk about with Love Never Fails. But professionally, that was the beginning of my professional life in the IT world. And it's just been a wild ride for 23 years.
Wow. So the 10-year plan for school.
Yeah.
Dancing in Vegas, huh?
I had plans. I did.
So take us through as you're working in IT, like many of us in technology, we do these jobs and you're kind of moving up, you're busy, distracted, you're starting to kind of make it. Lots of things, going on in personal lives as we start to build families and things like that. How did it get to where you, I know in parallel, started Love Never Fails, get involved? How did you get involved with that while you're working this high-powered career?
Yeah, so I'm working the high-powered career, but I'm continuing to date really unhealthy people because I'm unhealed. I hadn't done any recovery work. I'm not in counseling. I'm not attending church. I hadn't given my life to the Lord yet. I had this baby who I loved, and I'm literally going out with, guy after guy who are addicts, who are abusive. And, I get to this point when my son is 6 years old and I say, that's it. Like, I can't do this anymore. I've got my fancy cars. I purchased my home. I have all this cash and it's still not fulfilling me. Like, what's the deal here? There's gotta be something else. I love my son with all that I am, and I'm still empty inside. And so that's when I collided, and that's when the Lord drew me to him. And in some imagery that he gave me, which was so powerful, is he showed me myself as a little baby, and he was holding me and he was rocking me, and he just kept saying to me, this is where I want you to be, right here. I want you to let me love you. I want you to let me rock you and hold you, because I never got that. I know that, my mom held me and loved me, but she was very traumatized. She was very tired. She was very living in a chaotic way. And that has an effect on a child, that it disturbs our attachment. It disturbs our ability to feel safe. And I needed to just have that strong hold from him. And when he got a hold of me, from there, my life began to just change. I began to serve in the women's ministry. I began to go to counseling. I began to go to my own Celebrate Recovery 12-step classes. I began to work with the youth in my church. And this is the irony of it, right? Genesis 50:20 says, what the enemy means for bad, God uses for good. And here I was making plans to go to Vegas to dance. But what I didn't realize is that the Lord would plant a seed later, that I would start a dance ministry where I was working with children from the inner cities like I was, and teaching them dance, but not the Vegas style, right? But relating to that, knowing how to, a lot of what I did with my dance ministry is I would take some of those hip hop songs, and I would look for Christian versions of them, and I would say, we're restoring and redeeming this music, and we're going to have fun with this. We're not going to be stuck in the past. We're going to be current, but we are going to love God while we're doing it. We're going to honor God. And so we started doing that, and that was cool. We were in the community dancing with so many people. And then in 2010, one of my 15-year-old dance students stopped coming to class. And I said, she must not be interested anymore. That happened quite a bit, kids change and whatnot. But a few months later, someone brought this girl. They said, I got a girl outside. I was teaching a 12-step recovery class. And they said, I got a young lady outside. And I prayed, and the Lord said, you would know what to do. And I got out of my class, and there was my student. My student had been sold on International Boulevard in Oakland. And I took her across the street, and we sat down for hot cocoa, and we had a little conversation. And she began to tell me how she was choked, and she was raped, and she was shot at. And I was just stunned, and I was traumatized. I was triggered, and and I didn't know that could happen to kids. I thought that prostitution was something that only happened with women, and the older women, and it's because they wanted to do it. And I had all these perceptions based on my background. And I had, and that whole experience just rocked my world. And I remember spending 4 months crying out to the Lord every night. And I would drive up and down International Boulevard, because after I dropped my student off at home that night, she went back out. And I learned about things like trauma bonding and Stockholm Syndrome. And I realized that it's such a complexity that happens with human trafficking, where, it's nothing like what you think, oh, why don't they just leave? It's not that kind of thing. There's so much trauma and unhealthy connectedness, and that, it doesn't just get fixed in one night. And so it was there that I through that brokenness, first of all, that I had my own epiphany that I was made for this. I was called for this. And that, again, that what the enemy had meant for bad in my life, what he was trying to tempt me with, the dancing and the lies about my worth and my worthlessness and my abandonment, all of that came to a head at that moment.
Well, that's quite a story. It says a lot about the woman who prayed and was led to you as you're teaching that program.
Yes, Carmen. Yeah.
What's an amazing thing there. And then the impact of you then kind of intersecting with that dance student and her trauma, but then the impact they had on you. So then how does Love Never Fails come out of that? And while you're still working in tech at Cisco, you got this side project going, right?
Right, this side project. I know, it literally was a full-time job while I was working at Cisco, which anybody who works in the high-tech industry knows that is miraculous into itself, to have a full-time job as a global senior sales leader at Cisco, and simultaneously be running a nonprofit was nothing short of a miracle. And a single mom of 2 children to boot. So it was, at the time, it was 2 children, and we'll talk more about how that grew as well. But anyway, I was just amazed. I put the call out to people in the community, and I said, who's interested in joining me? This was all volunteer, right? We had no budget. We had no staff. Like, who would be interested in joining me in this journey? And about 75 people immediately stepped forward. And from there, it's just been hundreds and hundreds and hundreds that have joined us. And so we're coming into our 10th year now. And up until the 8-year mark, I worked at Cisco simultaneously. And I always felt, and this is just something that I carry with me from my childhood, I guess, I always had an insecurity that I wasn't doing a good enough job. There's no way that I'm doing a good enough job at my Cisco job, but I would get, awards and accolades and promotions. And so I guess I was doing a pretty good job while running Love Never Fails. Again, nothing short of a miracle. And I was just so pleased to be able to, house women and children, provide them life skills, job skills, do prevention education in the schools, rescue children and women that are actually being held. Literally, the Lord dropped so many visions in my mind, so much creativity about how to rescue people from my home. I rescued somebody from my home by orchestrating a bunch of people. I don't know how I knew how to do that, but I just thank God. I am just so grateful.
My goodness, that's just amazing. There's so many things from a faith standpoint. Sounds like it's going on in your life at the same time, trying to kind of build your growing family. Tell us a little bit about how it came to this point, not too long ago, I understand, where you actually made the decision to leave. And tell us what was going on, even kind of a vision you had or a sense that it was now time to go. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So I fast forward, right after being single mom, doing Love Never Fails, I meet this wonderful guy, Timothy Russell. He's also pastor of New Hope Christian Fellowship in Hayward. And I meet him And we get married, and he actually had 5 children, so we have 7 children together. And our youngest is now 13, our oldest is 31. And anyway, so we got this blended family going. We're pastoring a church. We're running Love Never Fails. I'm working at Cisco. And there was a point, like when I got to like the 6-year mark on Love Never Fails, where I remember I said to him, honey, I gotta stop. This is too much. This is too much. And he's like, no, honey. No. This is the provision for the vision. That's what happens when you try to tell a pastor is he comes up with some fancy way of making
sounds good, right?
Yeah, like provision for the vision. So I said, okay, I'm working with that. And I got to this place where I was like, you know what? I've accepted this. This is my life. This is how and God, your grace is sufficient for me. I'm going to move forward. Well, I'm in a service in September of 2018, and my husband is preaching, and all of a sudden I hear, it's time to move. I'm like, it's time to move. I'm like, okay, I don't know what that is, but I'm keep. No. It's time to move. And I got this sense that it was time to do Love Never Fails full time. It just came up for me. It wasn't an audible voice. It was a sense. It was a leading. And so after service, I pulled my husband aside. I go, I got something to tell you. I think I heard that the Lord say it's time to move, and it's time for me to leave my job. And he said, first time ever. He goes, let me go pray about that. And so he goes and he prays, goes and prays for a couple hours, comes back with a whole financial plan on how we're going to turn off this and turn off that and change this so that we can make it on just his income. And we were going to donate my salary for the first year so that there's no burden on the organization. And I could go out and raise the money, the funds for me to come on, but with the organization year 2. So he says, yeah, that's definitely from the Lord. And I'm like, okay. So I gave my notice. I give my notice. Our vice president, knowing that I gave my notice, nominates me for something that's called the Bridge Award, where out of 66,000 employees, 10 people were awarded this Bridge Award. He nominates me. I'm selected amongst these other amazing leaders. We're sent to South Africa. And, and we're there at the global, at a global party, just a huge party where they're celebrating freedom and a bunch of other things. And we're invited there. I get to bring, that best friend, Rachel, that from 5 years old, I bring her as my guest. I didn't tell you this before, but one thing that happened was a very close friend of hers actually paid for our plane tickets, because we got plane tickets from Cisco. And he said, no, you can't go on that plane. It's a 36-hour ride. I'm not going to allow you to go on that plane. He paid for us to fly Emirates. Our tickets were $20,000 each. We flew to South Africa first class. I've never in my life taken a shower on the plane. I cannot explain to you, we're talking about welfare, foster child, and I'm in here being given pajamas to take my nap and my 5-course meal in this little apartment that they have for you in the plane, right? And I'm treated like royalty. And then they fly me to South Africa and they put us in these beautiful places. And they just literally, I felt that God was throwing me a retirement party. And then I ended up leaving in January. And shortly after I left Cisco in January, I came in contact with this another woman that's just a beautiful, dear sister of mine. And she and I bump into each other at a church that we were, a church where we were not planning to, she doesn't go there and I don't go there. So we usually wouldn't be in each other's midst there. And I bump into her and she begins to cry. And I'm like, why are you crying? She said, oh my gosh, I'm on the phone with my friend right now. And my friend told me that the Lord told her to give you $15,000. And also that you should know, and by the way, she didn't know I had left my job. She didn't know that yet. She says, you should know that he's saying, when you come off your job, I want you to remember that a complete stranger gave money for you to be able to do that. And it was like all of these confirmations that I was headed in the right, because you can imagine leaving my retirement, my benefits, my salary, when I have small children. I'm really like, are you crazy or what? But with that kind of leading and guiding and affirmation from God, there was no doubt in my mind that I was doing the right thing.
Oh, wow, that's awesome. You know, Anna, I remember you had many kind of experiences like that. But let me ask you, and Anna, you can chime in on this as well. But you know, I think a lot of people listening to a story like that, and people hear or read things like that, that God said this, or they got this sense, or they heard a voice, but not really a voice, but a sense. There's a lot of confusion with that stuff, and
Yeah.
since, but we know, in fact, it's scriptural. We know that God does all kinds of things like that all the time. But the validation of this, what I would see in your case, real obedience of stepping into a leap, and out of obedience and the response is almost like then the showering of blessings, that almost the validation. And you know you're like in the right spot. That's a very cool place to be. So
Yes.
that's really cool. And I know you've had experiences like that, but comments on that?
Definitely. I love it when you said the confirmation and the affirmation, right? That's the most beautiful thing, is when you step out in faith, right? And God says, step out of the boat, right? Walk on water. And it's right. It's scary at first, but then he shows you he's with you and he provides and he starts confirming. I've experienced so many things like that in my life. And going back to earlier in the conversation, I love when you said, you know, that vision you had of the baby being held in her father's arms and being loved. And I couldn't help but think about when you had your baby and you felt love, you know, the love of God for the first time, right?
Yeah.
And it's like he brought that full circle.
Mm-hmm.
And then that was the impetus, right, of your journey. And it was like fuel, right, that helped you get to where you are. So that's so inspiring.
Yes. I think it's interesting that the Lord continues to use children to propel me in my life. And, you know, thinking of my own hurt childhood, right? And the years that were stolen from me, where I didn't get to really be a kid. And then I get to, in turn, experience this transformation through my own birth and these visions, my own birth of my own son, and then the visions that followed. And then now with these children that we are literally impacting, you know, with Love Never Fails, that are being trafficked or that are at risk, even the women, even the mothers that are in our homes with their small children, you know, I mean, if we can deter them from continuing in that life, those children are being protected. They're being redirected to the life that they're supposed to have. So, yeah, I mean, wow. Yeah, it's just, I'm so grateful.
Yeah. Vanessa, as you kind of bring yourself to look at your life today and what you've got, what you've built up with Love Never Fails, you're still in the midst of it. But I think, you know, a lot of people that are doing great work of service and involved in these types of good things. The reality, of course, is that they're difficult. There's still hardships. There's ups and downs in life. And that's the thing. I think a lot of people think when you do good stuff and you think you're on the right path and God gives you little blessings that, you know, and they live happily ever after, or that it's, you know, it's all perfect. And of course it's not. There's challenges, and there's nothing scriptural said it's going to be in this world perfect. There's challenges. So take us through that. In fact, you know, what is today, who is God to you today? How do you deal really with
Mm-hmm.
kind of that spiritual realm of your life in the midst of this still challenging environment? And then maybe also weave into that, what's some advice you might give to others in the business as well as in these types of service settings that are longing for that spiritual depth?
Yeah. So, for the challenges that I see today, they're definitely all around. When you look at COVID, right? We've got all kinds of challenges there. We've got some racial divide going on in our communities. We even have a pretty strong division going on amongst brothers and sisters in the Christian family. And what God has really brought me to this at this time is a place of forgiveness. And I'm holding the words that he said on the cross very tenderly in my heart, which is, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And it's walking with a great deal of empathy for everybody, even the people who are racist, even the people that are abusing other people. I'm trying to reach into what was their upbringing, what were their thoughts. And again, if I think about my own journey, if you would have caught up with me at 17 or 16, I would have told you that religion stuff, that God stuff, that's fake. I would have told you that. And I, and it's because I wasn't ready to receive, or I didn't understand it for myself. And so it was a, Father, forgive her, for she knows not what she's doing. And we have to be prepared to hold others in the same place when they're not ready to receive, they're not ready to understand, they're not ready to see the whole picture, or how something might be hurting somebody else. And so I just, those are the challenges that I see, and the way that I'm choosing to engage with the world at this time. And I got to tell you, where, the old me would have a lot of anxiety and maybe even be dealing with depression, I have none of that. I have nothing but love for God and for people that I come encounter with. I don't care whether they're Democrat or Republican. I don't care what race they are. I don't care I don't care what city they're from. All I care about is that I want to meet them with a smile. I want them to know they're loved and that they're important to me. And that's guiding me, so that's how I'm getting through my challenging time.
That's a great word, and kind of an extension of that. If you can comment on, in light of our current environment where we have this racial divides, we got these tensions that are out there. We got long-standing kind of things starting to bubble up in new ways, and then you, as a woman in the marketplace, in the technology world, as a Black woman.
Mm-hmm.
This environment, you're in the, and your parents are mixed race, white.
Mm-hmm.
You got all kinds of
yeah.
So how, in a sense, what's your perspective on all that, and how do you maneuver this and be a wise person to the chaos around us?
Yeah. Well, two things. I wanted to tell you a really quick story, which is that my mom actually married a Japanese man. So her last name is Nagasawa. And when she was in the hospital, I showed up and she was behind a curtain. And I remember, this was years ago, the nurse, I showed up to the front desk and I said, I'm here to see, Ms. Nagasawa. And they said, okay. And I said, yeah, she's my mom. And they're like, oh, okay. And, and so we walk into the room. So they're like, this is weird. Okay. You're going to Nagasawa. She's your mom. Okay. They open the curtain and there's a white lady with, blonde hair. That's my mom. And they're like, I don't know what to do with this lady. I don't understand this. And so for me, this has been, all of my girlfriends, like a lot of my girlfriends are Latina. One of my other best friends is Filipino. And then, I'm Black and white, and, my husband's Black, and, and so it's just, all kinds of mixing it up that really makes it very interesting to me. I speak Spanish. I learned in high school. I love languages. I learned Japanese also in high school. You know, and I just love to learn different cultures and about different people. And I think that is the way that I meet these racial issues, is again just appreciating other, you know, people for who they are, and really thinking the best of them, and thinking that they, you know, that they want to learn more about me, and you know, and it usually goes really well from there. So, but you know, I will say that coming back to Love Never Fails, there are some challenges in the tech world that I think we need to uncover. You know, one of the things that is troubling me is that only 25% of the the IT world in terms of the workforce is 25% are women. And of that, only 2% are Black and 3% are Latino. And so my concern is that there is a lack of awareness amongst women and amongst women of color about these sustainable opportunities in this field. And so I'm doing a lot to go into communities, for example, in Cherryland, in Alameda County, one of the most impoverished areas in the county, and very highly, I want to say 55% are Latina, and then I believe it's 12% are Black. So very high minority population, and very high poverty, 18% poverty. And so I'm trying to get into that community and tell them about tech and get them excited about sustainable careers in tech. And what I really need is for employers to come alongside me and help me to actually get those individuals away from the traditional service jobs, which are very, you know, a lot of turnover. As we saw with COVID, the most highly impacted positions were service jobs. And so, and getting them into some more sustainable careers so that we can start to change the landscape of all people's lives, and provide sustainability and safety for these folks. And so that's something that I'm really passionate about, and I'm working on through our program, which is called IT Biz under Love Never Fails.
Yeah, that's amazing. You know, of course, you met Anna just recently, and Anna being in the placement business, and quite a story herself. There's a good connections.
There's a connection there.
It really is fascinating that you're, you know, what you're just commented on. And I think most people don't recognize or realize how hard it is for people raised in Latino communities or Black communities with parents that don't know any better in terms of how to put these kids on the fast tracks. They really do get left behind. And then to break in. And so that your own personal story is pretty incredible when you think of what you were able to kind of do to get yourself in, given your background. It's an amazing distancing that there is out there. It's so unfortunate.
Yes. Yeah. So my hope is that we can just inspire the younger generation, and even the, you know, I'm targeting 40 and up as well, just everyone. I believe there's a place for everyone to get into the tech industry in some way or fashion, and you know, and so we'll see how it goes. But I'm starting to see some really great traction from some tech companies wanting to do more in this way, and so I'm excited. I'm excited about that next new open door.
Yeah. Well, we have just a little bit of time. Maybe take some questions from the crowd. If there's just put some questions in chat. Anna, do you have a question or comment just as we wrap up here, that before we take on any questions?
You know, I would just say, I hope that a young woman who's facing sex trafficking, who's you know, victim to that, watches this. And I just want to know, what would you tell them, right? So that they have hope, because you understand the psychology behind that, right? And sort of they're like in prison in a way, right? What would you tell them so that they have hope?
Yeah. Something happened to me last week. And again, I have so many of these types of experiences. It's incredible. I came in contact with a woman who's Muslim, and she was sold or given as a child bride to her uncle, and at the age of 12. And she had 3 children for him, and then he gave her to one of his sons, and she had 2 more children for him. And now she's being trafficked. And you can imagine, me being of Christian faith and her of Muslim, I'm not going to start hitting her with the Bible, and I'm not going to start, asking her to pray to Jesus, because I don't want to offend her. And she wears a hijab. She's very, she's very dedicated to Allah. And so what I did was I just listened. I just listened to her feelings. I validated that she was valuable, that she was important to me. I told her she could call me whenever she needed to call me. And I put her in contact with another Muslim survivor of human trafficking so that she could reinforce those messages of, you're just worth, she kept saying, I'm sorry I'm bothering you. I'm sorry I'm troubling you. I know this isn't your problem. And I kept saying, yes, it is, because I care about you, because I love you. I know that's hard to hear from some stranger, but it's true. And so I just think it's amazing that I get those types of opportunities. And I would say that to anyone who's listening. Human trafficking, I see in the chat, there's a question: who would you identify? Someone who's being sex trafficked. That means being sold for sex or sexual favors. Someone who's being labor trafficked, someone who's not making a living wage, or who's working under the table illegally, is a labor trafficking victim. Those would be the 2 that we would I would most identify with. There's others. There's organ trafficking, and there's a lot of other types of trafficking, human trafficking victims. But I would say those are most prominent, and here in the U.S. And oftentimes the underlying issue is a vulnerability and not feeling that you're worth anything, and feeling ashamed because you were coerced. Oh, how could I be so stupid? How could I have been tricked? And I would just say to that person, don't worry about that. Because it could have been any of us. What's important now is that that you're cared about, you're loved, and you have somebody in your corner that can help you get to a better place.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you for kind of defining that. Some people are asking, how can they help? How can they? And in fact, we'll figure out a way to get your. At the end of this session, we're going to run some slides that have the contact information for Love Never Fails. But tell us, how can people support you, help you, what contact and all that?
Yeah, so certainly you can reach out to us. You can go to our website, which is loveneverfailsus.com. You can reach out to me personally, and that's Vanessa, Vanessa, at loveneverfailsus.com. Some of the things that are top of mind right now is last year we opened 2 new homes. So we had 2 homes already for women and children, and we opened 2 more homes. And we could definitely use financial support and in-kind support services, volunteering. Like right now, we have a washer and a dryer and a refrigerator out, and so we actually have a few people that have said they may be able to help. But it's stuff like that we could totally use help with. But our homes, we have one of our homes is for youth, girls 13 to 17, and we have 4 beds there for girls. Currently, we have a 15-year-old and a 14-year-old in the home, and we have another 15-year-old. Actually, our 15-year-old turned 16 in the program, and then a 14-year-old, and we're about to get another 15-year-old next month. And the reason we opened this home was because all of the homes, you see, people don't know these things, but group homes had been shut down in the state of California, and there were no homes for survivors of human trafficking, specifically for children, in the state of California. And so, there are shelters for youth, but you can only, prior to COVID, you could only stay there for 21 days. And we had a young lady who I came in contact with. I went and picked her up from a police station, and she was 15, and and she had nowhere to go. So I dropped her off to one of the youth shelters, and they said because of COVID, they could keep her for 90 days. And that's when I said, you know what? We're going to open a home so this young lady has a place to go when her 90 days is up. Otherwise, I'm going to have to turn her loose to the street. And I didn't want to do that. And so she ended up not coming because she got a different kind of placement. But she basically was doing some couch surfing and then ended up back with her family. But we opened the home anyway. And we have these young ladies in here. And then we opened up a home for men, mostly labor trafficking victims, and also transitional age youth that are displaced. And why did we do that? Well, because we were doing our IT classes, and we were finding out that a lot of those young men in our classes were living in their cars. One of them was 19, knew how to program in 6 programming languages, living homeless in his car. I said, this cannot be. So we opened the home for 5 men. And right now we have 3 men, and one of the men is married and he has his wife there with him. So we could use your help, your financial support, your in-kind, your service to help us further that, as well as our IT Academy. Those are the areas that we are really focusing on here in 2021.
Well, that's wonderful, and to hear all that, and those stories are amazing. I got a note, and I'll close with this from Hermie Schmidt, who works for City Team, and they serve up 6,000 households in multiple 27 locations around, and the biggest issue he sees is economic empowerment. So he wants to partner with you guys. So
yay!
We'll make those connections. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today, and hope it's been an encouraging and an engaging conversation. And Vanessa, thank you so much for sharing your stories and your life, and it's really, really profound what you're doing and how God is using you today. And thank you, Anna. And look forward to stay tuned for other events. Go to connect.sv for other types of events like this. But appreciate everybody joining us today. Bye now.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining Engage Virtual Edition. We hope you were encouraged and inspired. If you would like to learn more about a faith journey and relationship with God, please email us at info@connect.sv. Thank you to our corporate sponsors, Love Never Fails, Alturas Technology Services, and MXL Partners. Get connected, join our LinkedIn group, and be part of a growing community. Follow us and continue the conversation on Instagram at Connect Silicon Valley. And follow and like us on Facebook. Thank you for joining us. We hope you were encouraged and inspired to continue conversations about faith and life.